Good evening, my beautiful friends. This is Nightfall with Maui Paul, Sunday edition. We are going to be working with the this I Am deck that I have, and we are here today to go over the card that we pulled on Friday morning, which was the I Am Deep card. And on Friday morning, we said that we look past the surface and into the profound. And I feel like I had a very deep weekend doing exactly those things. And so this weekend, I did indeed look past the surface and into the profound. And I hope that you did as well. So we are here to pull another card for the week and to just talk about we're going to talk about the affirmations on that card. So I have all of these cards pulled for the week, and we are going to pull the one off the top, and we are going to have some fun. And we're going to just have some fun with them. So I'm going to ask you if you guys are the affirmation on the card, and you'll respond, I am that affirmation. And we're going to move on from there. So let's just take the one off the top of the deck and say that today I am abundant. I am abundant. I appreciate the richness of my experience. So I am abundant. I appreciate the richness of my experience. I'm going to write that down. First of all, I'm going to put it up there. And next up, I'm going to actually write it down on the chat. And I encourage you to write it down too. But first, I'm going to ask you if you are abundant. So are you abundant today? You are abundant. You appreciate the richness of your experience. And as we were writing that, I have been busy at work writing it down in the chat. I see you are here. Hello there, Easy. I see you are on the live stream today. Nice to see you. Nice to catch you on this Sunday evening as we go into our week. And we go into our week with this idea that we are abundant. And I often, good morning or good evening, Shauna. I see you are here as well. You are abundant and so excited for this week, this upcoming week. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty rad week upcoming. I can feel it too. We are indeed abundant. So often when I hear people think about abundance or talk about abundance, they usually are tacitly meaning money. They're usually talking money when they talk about abundance. Like, oh, I want some abundance. It's just like this new age woo-woo catch term for I want to be rich, but I don't want to say that I want to be rich, because if I said I wanted to be rich, then it would somehow be it would somehow make me less of a person. And so we're just going to talk about abundance instead. And if you think about what abundance is, when we truly consider the meaning of the word, abundance just means that we have more than what we need, of whatever it is that we need. I have an abundance of food. I'm not starving. I have an abundance of air. Pretty much all of us have an abundance of air. There is, if we don't have an abundance of air, we find out about it really quick. Our body starts talking about it really, really fast when that doesn't happen. So having an abundance is really just about having more than we need at any given time of whatever it is, whatever resource we're using. If we want to talk about it think about it in the form of money, abundance is when we pull out our debit card and we go to buy something and there is enough money to pay for it. There might not be enough money to pay for the next bill, but there's enough money to pay for this one. And therefore, in that moment, we are abundant. We have an abundance of it. And when we recognize that we have an abundance of things and just how many things that we have an abundance of, I have an abundance of I have an abundance of food and clothing and shelter. And honestly, when I think about it, like these are the primary things that I need. And so therefore I have an abundance of, an abundance of the things that are really matter and are important to me. And so, so abundance is not about richness. It's not about money. It's not about, it's not about the things that we tend to think of when we think of somebody who is abundant. Abundance is something that we can express in our lives right now. Consider right now that we have an abundance of electricity. Yep, we have an abundance of internet. You have more internet at your disposal right now than you are currently using to watch this video. It's an abundance. And so when we start to think about abundance in those terms, then it becomes so much easier for us to recognize it when it's around. And then when we recognize the abundance, that's when we can start feeding into it. That's when we can start using the things that we have an abundance of. let's use the resources that we have an abundance of rather than the resources we have a lack of. I recall that one time I was living in Costa Rica, and I had an abundance of money, and I had an abundance of time, and I had an abundance of problems too. And I had to think about, like, which problems did it make sense to solve with money, and which problems did it make sense to solve with time, because I had an abundance of both at that time in my life at that point. And so I really had to think about it. And I saw so many people went down there to Costa Rica. So many of my friends, very wealthy people, certainly had an abundance of money, way more than I did. And they just thought that they could solve any money or any problem with money. And so many of them just very quickly found that it was an extremely expensive proposition to attempt to solve a time problem with money, or to attempt to solve a relationship problem with money. But boy, would they try. They would keep on throwing it at it. And when I recognized that I could use the correct resource to solve the problem, I feel like life got a lot simpler. And so when I realized that money is a wonderful thing to have, and it can solve certain problems, but it's really all about solving the correct problem with the correct resource. And so that's what abundance is, when we recognize that we have a tremendous abundance of quite a few different resources at our disposal, and then we use the one that we have the most of to make sure that we don't have a lack of it. So having abundance in our life and recognizing abundance in our life reduces our stress and our anxiety, because we're no longer focused on what we lack. We are focused on what we have a lot of. And having a lot of stuff is just the same kind of problem as not having enough of it. But boy, it's a lot less stressful and anxiety producing to solve a problem, to solve the I have too much of this problem versus I have too little of this problem. So we also have more opportunities when we recognize the abundance in our lives, because when we recognize where we have an abundance, we also understand where we can allocate risk. All things in life have some risk associated with them. So why don't we risk the things that we have an abundance of, and be careful with the things that we don't have an abundance of? So it's just more opportunities. And the other really amazing thing that recognizing abundance gives to us is increased creativity, because we realize that we can solve problems in a lot of different ways. Going back to my Costa Rica example, a lot of my friends who moved down to Costa Rica, or the people who became my friends after they moved down there, they came from a place where they had such a tremendous, a ponderous, a large amount of money, especially relative to the people who lived all around them, and they assumed that any problem could just be solved by throwing some money at it. And in many cases, these problems that they had couldn't be solved by throwing money at it. They were problems that could only be solved by having better relationships with their neighbors, or learning a little bit better Spanish. Like, there were other resources that they could have used. And if they recognized that, then they would have had an even more abundant experience. So, there's a lot of ways that we can incorporate this and really incorporate an abundance type practice into our lives. The first of which is just practicing gratitude, just recognizing what we have and pointing it out and saying, hey, I have a bunch of this, and so therefore I'm going to use it, and I'm grateful for what I have. Whenever we recognize what we have and are grateful for it, it just allows us to focus on the positive aspects. And the second thing that is just really impactful in creating more abundance in our lives is that we have to take action on these things. When we recognize that we have a resource that can be allocated in a certain way, we have to take action on it. And it's easier to take action when we realize that we are working from abundance. Think about something that we both have an abundance of right now, which is air. I'm breathing all the air that I want. I can do a bunch of jumping jacks right now if I want to, and I'll be breathing a lot more air, but I'm not worried about it because I have enough. Now, if I was in a place where I didn't have enough air, or where I was in a spot, maybe I had a scuba gear on or something, and I had to conserve my air, then I would absolutely not be breathing really rapidly just because I could, because I wouldn't have an abundance of that resource. So it's really important to just take action in the areas that we have abundance in. And as we do this, it's important for us to practice compassion, and we recognize that we haven't always had abundance in all of these areas, and that the people around us don't have abundance in the same areas that we have abundance in. And so therefore, it's so important for us to recognize that and to have compassion and to, just understand that as we suggest things to other people, that we take into account, their relative abundance in comparison to ours, and also recognize that not everybody understands understands or recognizes the abundance that they have in their own lives. So we're going to go through this week, and we are going to be abundant in it. And I'm really excited to just carry that kind of an energy through our week. So I am abundant this week. I'm really excited about where it leads, and I have just really planted a lot of seeds recently, and it's fun to just tend them and to watch them sprout. So I want to say thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I will return tomorrow at 9 a.m. for the wake up call with Maui Paul, and we will work through yet another one of these cards that I have, because indeed I have a whole bunch of them that represent the days of this week. So we're going to have all kinds of fun with that. I want to say thank you guys so much for coming by, for enjoying this Sunday evening with me. And I will talk to you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Aloha from paradise.